Creating contracts for products or services that are highly negotiable, things where you have a lot of little pieces that could be modified within any contract, within teams that may be large, may be distributed, may have a series of different permissions levels for each part of the team, is a very simple process with Truck. As we know, in any time you have one individual trying to sell another individual, one organization selling to another organization, oftentimes, whether it's commercial real estate, whether it's a service like a banking service, or whether it's just any random widget, what we typically will see in these larger, more complex deals is essentially a Word document is what codifies the agreement of both parties as to what they're going to sell, what the terms of support, everything else are, and those terms are almost always negotiable. What we typically see is track change Word documents going back and forth via email. Now, if this was only two parties, that can be simple enough and things can get done. Problem is when you have what is typical, which is a whole other host of individuals on each side who wants to have input into deals because of the size or because of the complexity of it. For example, everyone's going to have a manager who has their own opinions, their operations folk, legal, GM may have their own opinions, and how those opinions flow into this negotiation is going to vary significantly. For example, everyone has had the manager where they're telling you this is exactly what I want every single time, and you have an information flow of, again, another series of potentially different opinions that have to be accounted for. Legal always wants to be known as to what's going on, what's happening. We have to keep them fully informed even as these documents become unwieldy. Maybe operations is something where they have feedback back and forth saying you can say this, can't say this, we can't deliver that. Or maybe you have a GM that's really on top of the ball and wants to be a part of it. Or in these situations, maybe out of these, the individual in the field isn't the one who can actually even agree to anything. Maybe you have one individual who has approval authority. And even if all these other opinions are being put into this document, even if this document is attempting to account for everything, there's one person who really, it's their responsibility for approval of that end document, and they need to be kept up to speed. We need to make sure that their needs and their understanding of what the organization is doing needs to be accounted for, no matter who the sales rep or who the rest of the team is. And now where this gets a little more unwieldy is that individual may not just be responsible for just this one contract. They're responsible for plenty of contracts of plenty of different items all around the world. And they have to be up to speed on all these contracts at all points in time because it's their responsibility at the end of the day, it's their name on it, it's their approval on it. And they cannot have that contract accidentally slipping something that's 20 in as 2. With Troc, by linking negotiations across a team, that GM who's working with that salesperson, legal, all the other pieces of that puzzle for all these different contracts, what we see instead of just a mess of Word documents that no one can keep track of and approve with any real certainty, what we can instead is make sure that that individual with approval authority at the highest level is, number one, seeing exactly what is relevant, what's changing, what's actually in flow within some of these complex negotiations when it's happening. More importantly, they're avoiding the risks of these reply-all mistakes we typically see in a lot of these contracting situations, or in situations where the negotiation may still be going on and one party is coming up with a side deal that no one knows about until it's too late. Troc prevents all these items by ensuring that everyone only has the permissions that they're supposed to have, whether they're the type of individual who's allowed to propose changes in negotiation, whether it's someone who has to see everything but may not necessarily be directly reporting into it, or whether it's one person you want to make sure they are the one where all approvals have to go through that person. Nothing can happen without them knowing. We need to make sure that we have full control of this negotiation at that level where that individual is responsible. Troc can make all these negotiations flow more smoothly, efficiently, effectively with its negotiation management platform. And doing that within Troc is very simple. Setting up a contract from the document management space works just like any other document in Troc. First, we create a new document. And once you're in the document creation space, we again, as always, we name our document. And again, if we're looking at many of these situations, we're going to probably be starting with a template. Most sales organizations or most sales contracts are going to look very similar. In that way, you pick the template that you're going to be working with from the source document, which allows it to be the starting point of your document when you start going. And what we're really looking to do here is manage what our team's roles and responsibilities are within that team. The easiest way to do this is first start by setting up your actual team, creating the document before you actually bring in another team into the system. So once our template is in the system, if we go back into settings, what we can now do is start adding team members into our team. And if we remember from the beginning, what we identified is if we're able to put in the different people we want here, like say we want the lawyer put into the team, and we want to make sure that lawyer is actually in a read-only permission state, we would make sure that we're selecting read-only from the template piece before we actually invite that person into the team. Now, let's say we wanted to invite someone in who has the ability to, for example, our salespeople. We don't always want that situation where the salesperson can go through, change the contract, send over that language, and that language is the latest offer on the table, because there's areas they may not know. They may not know the legal ramifications. They may not know how that strategy works within the entire company. In order to give them the full freedom to make sure they're creating a deal that is able to be palatable to the actual customer, but still has approval by the organization because of all the different other pieces that may not be known to everyone. What you can do in this situation is actually put them in as a read-write-draft permission. What read-write-draft means is an individual can, in that situation, go look at the language in the document, hear what the customer wants. They can go through and make the modifications that they believe are necessary for that contract, but they cannot share them with the other side. They cannot share them with the other party they're selling them to. You have to have an individual who has share permissions. In our situation, maybe that's that GM, maybe that's the lawyer, maybe that's someone else who's higher up as the one who actually shares that document through. Once we have a team set up in these various different levels of permission, where we have someone who can actually draft different proposals, we have someone who's always able to see them because they're involved in them. We also have someone who actually has the ability to share them and put them out through to the other side. We have a situation where we can actually have a efficient, effective negotiation that remains controlled, remains productive, and gets us with Troc the most efficient outcome that we're looking to get, whether it be commercial real estate lease, whether it be financial services product, or whether it just be buying a complex widget.